In 1869, Wyoming Territory was divided into just 5 counties, running north to south. Converse County was created in 1888, allowing legal business from this area to be conducted in Douglas rather than making the much longer trip to Cheyenne. 1886 found the Fremont, Elkhorn, and Missouri Valley Railroad reaching the town of Lusk, which had a population of around 300 people. Lusk was mostly a tent city then, having only been in existence for a few months prior to the arrival of the railroad. Tents serving as homes and businesses had just picked up and moved from the town of Silver Cliff, located about a mile west near the Silver Cliff mines. The first school in Lusk began in September 1886 in a gospel tent near the present-day Baptist Church. Lusk was booming in many ways, with the October 8, 1886 Lusk Herald announcing that 9,000 head of sheep will be shipped tomorrow from Lusk and that 45 carloads of cattle are being loaded per day, with an estimated 1,500 carloads being shipped for the season. As with many settlements of the day, Lusk was rather lawless and wide open during its early years. Sometimes referred to as a little hell on wheels, the residents longed for calmer streets and the businesses complained about having their windows shot out repeatedly. In January 1887, Constable Charlie Gunn was shot and killed in the Walker and Water Saloon, which is the north part of the Lickety Stitch Quilt Shop today. It was open range country, and many large ranches got their start in the area. From the Addison Spa letters, it is written, "We, Spa, Manville, and Peck, met a man at Hat Creek by the name of O.C. Wade, who had a mule train and also an ox train freighting on the Cheyenne-Black Hills Trail. He also had a ranch and 1,200 head of cattle 8 miles west of Hat Creek on the Old Woman Creek. There was nothing to the ranch but a squatter's right, as the country had not at that time been surveyed. A dugout, a small stable, a corral, and a small tract of land fenced in for the meadow. But he did have 1,200 head of fine cattle on the ranch. He wanted to sell the cattle and the ranch, and we were not long in making a trade with him, since people bought cattle in those days by book count, taking the man's word for what he had. Mr. Manville thought that was like buying a school of fish in the sea, but the trade went through. This was the original O.W. Ranch. Addison Spa, Tom Bell, Swan Land and Cattle Company, C.F. Coffee, Converse Cattle Company, and T.B. Horde are among the well-known names that ran large numbers of cattle in the area. Addison Spa was the foreman of Roundup 15 in 1884, claimed to be one of the largest roundups ever held in Wyoming. When I saw the roundup description, 200 men, 2,000 horses, and 400,000 cattle worked in 6 weeks, I tried to visualize the size of their range and how many cattle per acre that would be. I mapped the roundup area to the best of my ability, given their fairly general descriptions of the country, and this is the map I came up with. After doing the math, this represents roughly 2.4 million acres, which works out to 6 acres per head of cattle. These calculations aren't history, but just my attempt to understand how heavily stocked the country really was. Is it any wonder that the winter of 1886 wreaked havoc that it did on the livestock industry? After that winter, called the Great Equalizer because it made the large and small cattlemen equal, open range running of cattle was pretty much over. Many of the big outfits backed by foreign money disappeared, leaving an opening for a new type of ranching. For the people that were left, sheep became the new livestock of choice. Jakey Mill, whose home base was north of Hat Creek, reportedly ran 40,000 sheep in addition to 2,000 cattle, as well as large horse herds. His sheep were trailed into Lusk, where he built a large set of holding pens for shearing. As homesteaders began to fill up the area, he filed on strings of 40-acre parcels on Lance Creek, Lightning Creek, and 20 Mile, ensuring that he could graze that range as he controlled the water. Although he ended up an extremely successful rancher, he got his start in humble ways. He and his family left their homestead at Fairburn, South Dakota in 1891 because it was becoming too crowded. In his time as a freighter along the Hat Creek to Deadwood Trail, he had picked out the location on Sage Creek where he later moved. Money was too short to buy cattle, so he willingly took a bum calf or lame cow from the trail herds heading north as payment for them watering their herds at his springs. This area did not escape conflicts between cattlemen and sheepmen. There are several accounts of sheep camps being attacked. John Story, Hat Creek rancher, had his sheep camp north of Hat Creek attacked with the wagons burned and 450 sheep clubbed to death. The herder spent several days and nights with the remaining herd without food until someone came to check on him. The Homestead Era is an often overlooked segment of history. It doesn't have the romance, excitement of the eras of stagecoaches, cowboys and Indians, and trail herds. However, it does have its own set of compelling stories of hard work, heartbreak, deprivation, and successes that greatly affected our local history and development as a community. Here is one example of a homesteader's story. It is written that James Edwards and his wife Liesl were the most successful black ranchers in the state of Wyoming, living more affluently and having more amenities years before their neighbors. Originally from Ohio, he and his father arrived in New Castle in 1900 to work in the Cambria coal mine. They had come to Wyoming with a group of Italian miners who drove them away soon after they arrived. Jim walked from New Castle to Lusk, where the Wilson Brothers Ranch hired him to herd sheep on the Niobrara River. He worked for the Wilsons for 10 to 15 years, becoming a foreman. In a common agreement of the day, Wilson set Jim up to homestead on Harney Creek with the expectation he would turn the land over to them after proving up. Instead, when he received the patent, he kept it. Edwards worked hard. He never stopped for a midday meal, as it would have interfered with his daily goals. A large part of the Edwards' success can be attributed to his wife Liesl, 25 to 30 years younger than Jim. She was talented, well-educated, an accomplished musician, and had a business-like mind. Liesl was responsible for many of the improvements to the two-room log cabin they first lived in. By 1919, their house featured many additional rooms, but most notable was their indoor plumbing, including a shower with hot and cold running water. The outside of the house was faced with large round quartzite and granite stones that Liesl had gathered into piles on the prairie for Jim to collect with a team and wagon. Liesl had many valuable skills such as cabinet making, furniture upholstering, and other sewing talents, as well as piano playing. She brought her baby grand piano with her to the ranch. Between 1922 and 1924, they received a severe financial blow when the banks in Lusk and Manville failed. They lost $30,000, an astronomical amount at the time. The Edwards were able to weather the Depression, partly because they utilized extremely cheap labor provided by unemployed blacks from Denver. These young men worked for just room and board and were expected to work very hard. Jim raised thoroughbred saddle horses, Hereford cows, sheep, and high-quality Percher and draft horses, along with razorback hogs, which he allowed to roam free, resulting in the destruction of neighbors' hayfields and gardens. Although generally accepted by the white community and considered neighborly, Jim was also known for not paying his debts, forgetting to return borrowed items, rustling some calves, and eating the neighbor's beef. Sometimes being caught red-handed deterred him for a while, but some had to resort to carrying a gun when dealing with him. After Liesl's sudden death, their holdings slowly dwindled from owning 16 sections of land and 2 school section leases, to Jim drinking heavily and eventually losing the ranch. Jim arrived in Lusk with only the clothes on his back and died in Scotts Bluff 51 years later, just as destitute.